everybody is here, hopefully for coding fundamentals, right? This is an introduction to coding using the microbit. The microbit is a great little piece of hardware. We've used it at cyber.org for a number of years. It's part of our cyberbot program. We've used it with our cyber literacy class. It's just a great little tool. We'll kind of touch up on the cyber microbit a little bit more in a little bit. Before we get going, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Jeff Holcomb. I've been in education 25 years or so. I got started as a middle school teacher. I did my student teaching as an 8th grade earth science teacher at a middle school, and taught in the fall. And then when my student teaching was up, the only position they had open at the school was a 6th grade ELA position. So I took that and managed to make it through my first semester with ELA. And then after that, I taught there a couple more years teaching 6th grade science before I moved on to high school teaching physics and engineering. And that's really where I got involved with cyber.org and programming in general. I was a high school teacher, and they came to me and said, "Hey, we're doing a cyber event, and we want you to come, take some kids and go to it." And that's when I first got my experience with robotics and with programming. I'll never forget that feeling I had. We did a Saturday workshop because we'd go a couple days before the students would come. And I'll never forget that feeling that when I typed something in the computer, sent to the robot, and it did what I asked it to do. It was the most amazing feeling in the world. Had me hooked on it ever since. And as a matter of fact, as soon as I left that in-service, it was at a university. I went to their uh, bookstore to try to buy one of the robots. They didn't have them there, so I ended up ordering it online. Paid like $150 for my first robot, and that got me involved and started with cyber and computer programming. So that's just a little bit about me and kind of where we're at with programming. So let's look at what we're going to be doing today. So your objectives, really want to kind of get you guys acclimated to the MakeCode block editor and how to kind of write some basic programs. This is an introduction class, so we won't get too deep into the weeds of this. We're also going to start looking at applying some of the knowledge. We'll be looking at loops, logic, variables, and maybe some interactive programs using the microbit. And finally, hopefully, when we're done, you'll have a couple of interactive tools you'll be able to take back to your school and use in your classroom, depending on whether or not you have the microbits. But we'll at least have one thing that you'll be able to use in your classroom just with the MakeCode on the computer. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about objectives or anything getting started, or any comments as we begin? All right. So what we're going to look at, some of the agenda. We're going to hit some coding fundamentals where I'll introduce you to the microbit, the hardware part of it. Then we'll look at the programming environment. And then I've got some 6 or 7 projects for us to look at and then review. And then we'll do a survey link to go with that. One thing I will say, I tried to break this up into the project. So depending on your level of skill with programming, if you're not real comfortable with it, you can just follow along and just watch me as I kind of go along. If you want to, you can get the MakeCode out and kind of go along with that and do it. We can also, it's designed where I have these projects. So if you get behind on one project, don't worry. You just kind of hold tight and then you jump into the next one. And we also tried to make these projects kind of where they build on each other. So you can start off with kind of a low level and then build up to a more complex program. Okay, so starting off, all this is really based off of the curriculum material we have called Coding Fundamentals. It's an introduction to coding using the microbit. And there's 2 types of programs you can use with the microbit. You can use this block code, which is, the little blocks kind of like pre-built functions that you can move into the workspace and use that. But you can also do text-based programming with microbit as well. And that really comes in handy because it's scalable for your school. So Charlene's here as well. Charlene was one of our middle school teachers, and she can speak to this. In the district that we were in, we had a middle school program that used the EV3, and they use all the block coding. In high school, we used the text-based programming, and what would happen a lot of times is that the kids would be in the programming class, the robotics class, the STEM classes, and they would do the MakeCode or the block coding in sixth grade, seventh grade, and then eighth grade. So they get kind of tired of it. And it really got bad when we started pushing it down into third grade. So by the time they got to middle school, a lot of times these kids had their fill of the block coding, and they were just tired of it. So we had to come up with some new things. We had to come up with some text coding. The nice thing about the microbit is it's an easy transition from the block coding right on into that text-based coding. So are the lessons that we have there built into this. Starting off, these are the ones we're going to hit most of these today. So you got lesson 1, which is unplugged one. Basically, it's just going to be talking about the hardware. And then we'll do the hello world, which is everybody's first program. If you've ever done any computer program, you always start off with hello world. And then we'll do some of these other ones like the ship animations, displaying images. We'll play around with some buttons, make a dice program, and then a coin flip. So we're going to use loops, logic, and different things and variables to go along with each of these. We also have some extra projects to go along with this. So there's plenty of material to go with the coding fundamentals. So we've got several other projects to come along with this. And then we also have some cybersecurity content to go explicitly with the microbit. So you can see it kind of builds on this, and there's plenty of material for you to work with on this. Okay, so that's kind of a overview of it. Any questions or any issues so far? We're all good? All right, so let's talk about the actual microbit, the hardware that comes with this. This, if you look at this, it's called the BBC microbit, and it comes from Great Britain, United Kingdom. They actually came up with this whole idea, and the idea was they wanted everybody to get one of these and learn some of these coding fundamental ideas at an early age. I want to say they were giving these to all their grade 7 students. I'm not sure about that, but I think it's something along those lines. And it's the idea behind this, and why I'm passionate about this, is we really need to work on building a cyber literate society, and we need to do that with our education. If you kind of think back to maybe 400 or 500 years ago, you think about who was in power, and usually it was the churches, it was the religion, and mainly the reason for that is they were the ones who were educated. They were the ones who could read. If you wanted to know something about the Bible, usually you had to go to a priest because he's the one who read the Bible, and he's the one who had to explain it to you. So you're kind of at the mercy of somebody else. And don't want to get to that point with our kids today. We want them to be literate enough to where when they get their phone, when they get a program, they kind of have a good understanding of it, so they're literate about it, so they're not reliant on anybody else. So if you look here, you can see this is the microbit, the hardware part of this. And we kind of look at some of the functionality of it real quick. Up here at the top, you can see we've got a micro USB port. You can use that to download programs to it. You can also use it to power the microbit. There's also a terminal function that goes with the program, so you can use a terminal to use text back and forth. We've got a 5x5 LED matrix, so you got 25 LEDs on here. Not a great resolution, obviously, but it works pretty good for what we're looking at with this. Your computer screen's got millions of LEDs. We're looking at about 5 here, but it's very functional for what we're looking at. Got a couple of inputs. You got 2 buttons here for our inputs, and then down here at the bottom, we do have an edge connector, so you can buy an edge connector that goes with like a breadboard, because these do have pins in them, so you have other functionality to it. So you can light LEDs, run servos and different things like that with the microbit as well. You would notice on this edge connectors, they do have some big fat ones here. For the 0, the 1, and the 2, that's going to be pin 0, pin 1, and pin 2. And then we've also got 3 volts in and 3 volts out, and then a ground here as well. On the back side, you can see we got an antenna for our Bluetooth. This right here is our processor chip. And then it also has a compass, accelerometer, and a temperature sensor on it as well. We got a battery connector here, so you can use this. You can download a program and take it out and do things with it as well. And then you've got a reset button to reset your program. And this little chip right here is for the USB interface. Okay, so this was version 1. You really can't tell this version 1. It doesn't say version 1 on there anywhere. This one is version 2. You can see it is version 2. We got V2 down here for that. It's basically the same, has a little more functionality to it. You got your USB connector here. You got touch sensor right here, so you got another input device with this. You still got your 25 LEDs. You got your 2 buttons, and then the same pin set up at the bottom, an edge connector at the bottom, and then your Bluetooth antenna. One other difference with this is it's got the reset button will also turn it off, so you can go into a power saving mode with it. And this one also has a speaker here, so you got extra functionality with output. And it also has a microphone. I believe it's this little chip right here. You can see the hole here. That's for your microphone. Easy way to really tell which one's which is you got these little scallops down here on the edge connector, and you can see, here's one that we have on here. Those little scallops are really handy. So if you have a little alligator clip, you can take it and clip it on here like that, and it's going to hold it really good and tight. So that's why they added those little scallops to it. So that's your microbit. That's where you are dealing with our hardware. Then moving on, you can look at our MakeCode. This is going to be the software. So you can go to the MakeCode site. Just go to makecode.microbit.org. And if you'd like to, go ahead and log into there. Okay, and then once you get to the MakeCode, this should be your home page and what you're looking at. And with this, you have several options. Basically, what we're going to be using mostly today is starting a new project. You can also see all the old projects that you've worked on, and you can import libraries and extra blocks and things like that with this one, which we won't get into today, but that's what you can do with this. Then once you click on new project, you get a screen that looks like this. So this is going to be where we're going to be doing all our work today. So we've got a simulator to show you what the program would be doing. Right here, we have all our block categories, and this is going to be our workspace. Once you've written the program and you want to download it to your microbit, you can click on the download button here, and that will download to the program. These 3 little dots, you have some other download options, such as saving it to your drive and things like that. Here's where you'll have the project name, and you can also save it to your computer right here. Settings up here on the settings side, you can do some other things like there is a versions history, so you can, if you make a mistake, you can always go back using the version. You can delete projects here, get some help, and then the home will take you back to the previous page, and this little microbit sign right here will take you back to the previous page as well. And then real quick, we'll kind of look at all these block categories. um, in a second, but this is where we're going to, is the meat of everything will be right in here. And then this is a workspace. This is where we're going to be doing all the actual programming. And every time you start up a new program, you'll see you'll get these two blocks every time they'll show up. There's going to be an on start and forever. So those will always be there. You can delete them. We'll show you how to do that in a minute. Delete them, add them. It's easy to add and subtract things from your workspace. So that's basically an overview of the homepage. Then if you look real quick, we'll just kind of do a brief overview of all the different block categories. You've got a basic one, and that's where obviously all your basic stuff is. That's where you can find like your pause button, your clear your screen, all your LEDs, those types of things will be there. Your inputs, how you want to get information into the microbit. Music, we won't touch on music really much today, but there are ways to make tones and do different melodies and things like that with a microbit. You can manage your LEDs. Lots of cool things to do with a radio. Again, we won't get into today's. This is the introduction. We can do that in a more advanced one. What we will be looking at today, though, we'll be doing a lot with the loops, the logic, the variables, and the math. So we'll be pulling blocks out of those today as well. And then I just kind of pulled all those out so you can kind of get an overview of what everything looks like. And one of the key things to really look at is they're all color coded, right? So you got nice little color codes for each one of these, and you can kind of see what goes where. All the basics going to be blue, loops are going to be green, and you can kind of see how they all fit together. And the key thing with this really is when you look at this, you got these little like C block looking ones like this one, like the forever or the on start or on button A. You're always gonna have to start your program off with one of these. And then you can see these other ones will kind of fit in there. That kind of fits right inside of that. Um, Other thing that you may notice is we got ovals on these, and then we also have some oval shaped blocks that will slide into that. So you can kind of look at this and see how things will fit together. All right, so that kind of concludes all that today. So we're ready to jump into making our first program. You guys ready to start do a program? Do the first one? And the first program everybody always does is Hello World, right? So we're going to do the Hello World project. Um, so if you will, go ahead and go to the Microsoft MakeCode, and you'll again come back to this page, and we want to click on New Project. So click on New Project, and we're going to name it here. So I'm going to name it Hello World, and then click Create. So once we've created our first project, you can see again, just like we had on the screenshot before, I've got my simulator over here. I got all my basic blocks here, and then my workspace over here, and with an on start and a forever block. So on start does just what it says. When the program starts up, it's going to run this. So whatever we put inside the on start block here, it's going to run when the program starts up. And then once it's done that, it'll be done. Forever obviously means it's going to go forever, right? So since we're doing a hello world, obviously the first thing we want to do here is throw in some text to go with this. So if you go to the basic block here, you can see we got all different things in our basic, and we got show number, show LED, show icon. And what we're looking for here is show string with the word hello in it. So if I grab that, I can pull it out and say, hey, here's my show string, hello. And the first thing you'll probably notice here is that the show string is grayed out. That's because, again, remember, it has to be inside one of these little C blocks for it to do anything. So if I grab this now, I can move it inside my start block. And the key thing to notice is when it comes in here, part of my on start turns yellow, and then it fits right in there. And then you should hear a little click and it starts to run. And once you've done that, as soon as you do that, you'll see it start running on your microbit simulator over here. The other key thing to notice is it just ran once, right? So it runs and then it's done. With the MakeCode, if I grab my onStart and move it at all, it thinks I've done something different to the program and it reruns it. So you can see if you grab it and move it, it'll rerun the hello world or just hello text across the microbit. On the microbit right over here too, you can also see we've got these little arrows. If I hit that, that resets the microbit and reruns the program. So that's your on start. Now, again, the key thing with that is it only ran one time. Now I want to put it in the forever block. So we can do a couple different ways. I could come over here and get a new one from here. I could take this out, drag it and throw it away. But what I'll like to do is I'll just grab it and I'll just move it for, oh, I grabbed the wrong one, sorry. Grab show string and put it here. I can still grab these and move them in and out. So I now just grab this and move it from here and slide it over here to the forever block. And now you can see it's running again, saying hello. And if we wanted to, we could make it the hello world. Just click inside the box and then I can type whatever I want. And again, you'll notice that once I do that, it's automatically going to start running over here on our simulator. And it will run forever. And then you maybe wonder why would I want to have anything on the on start? One of the things we always use on start for when I was a robotics teacher is anytime we started a program, we wanted some kind of visual clue or auditory clue that the program was beginning, because a lot of times what would happen with our robots is they had something called a brownout, and what would happen is the voltage would go just below enough for the processor to shut down, and then as soon as it shut down, it'd come right back up. So for instance, it'd be going along, a servo would kick in, the servo would take some of that voltage away from the battery pack, then the processor would shut off, and then it would come right back on. And what would be happening is, especially when they're doing like a dead reckoning project, they'd be going forward, it'd be on turn 3 and should be turning left, and all of a sudden it turns right, it starts doing crazy stuff. And a lot of times what would be going on is it would just be starting the program all over at the very beginning. So we always wanted to put something at the beginning of the program so we knew it was starting. We'd do an LED or speaker or something like that. So you may want to do something like that with this. So we come up to our basics, and I can grab a show LED, and then this is just a blank one, so they're all off. If I click on the block, that will turn the LEDs on. And I can go a little bit faster. I spread my fingers. So now you can see it starts up, shows all the LEDs on. So now I know my program has started, and then it jumps right into the hello world part of our program. One issue you kind of have with this, or you may have noticed, is when I start this off, you can see I get all my LEDs pop on, and then that H kind of goes across, and it's confusing because all the LEDs were on it as well. So we may want to clear that off. So you could do that a couple of different ways. I could just take another show LED block out and drop it underneath the one above it. Now,
looking down.
And now you can see it's gonna show the lights and then turn them immediately off. Another thing you can do is grab your basic and you can just go with a clear screen. So now you can see I show all my LEDs. I know my program started, it clears off, and then it just starts showing the hello world. All right, that makes sense. Everybody good with that one? Any questions or comments with the hello world? So if you're able to knock that out, you have gotten your first program done. And this is basically what we're looking at with this one. We work through all that. Extension you can do with this one is pretty fun is you can have all the students make a name badge. to go along with it. Then the next thing we're going to look at, we're going to do some interacting with the microbit. So now we want to have some kind of input to make it do something when we want to, or get a certain result out of it under certain circumstance. The microbit has several input devices. Obviously you got your buttons. They're right here. If it's a microbit version 2, this little gold part right here is a touch screen, so you can use that as like a button, not touch screen, just a touch pad, so you can use that as an input. It has a compass or a magnetometer, so you can use a magnetic field as an input. A thermometer, so you can measure temperature. And I believe this actually just measures the temperature of the processor, but you can still use that um, measure ambient temperature. You may need to calibrate a little bit to subtract a little bit from it, so maybe a little bit high. But you can always use another thermometer, kind of get an idea of how far off it is, and then just calibrate it and use that. You got an accelerometer that you can use, and then of course a microphone to picks up sound. Again, microphone, touch are only with version 2. Version 1 doesn't have those two things. The only output that I can really think of is the speaker. So the speaker comes out, that does give you your output. LEDs, a lot of people say, hey, the LEDs are really just outputs, right? But with the microbit, some of these LEDs also function as are light sensitive, so they do measure the amount of light hitting them. So you can use your LEDs as an input. So you could set it up to hit a certain threshold, and you could hook a light up to it. So you could say, hey, once it gets to a certain darkness, turn the light on. So you can set it up like that. Obviously, the radio has inputs and outputs, so you can it can receive messages and send messages out. And the pins, these pins, they actually call them GPIOs, which is general purpose input output. So those are input and outputs. So these are all the different ways that we can use the microbit to interact with that microbit, right? So let's look at this, and we'll jump into something to use the microbit with the buttons. So we're done with this one, right? So when we saved it's got hello world. So let's go ahead and you can click on the home button or the little microbit. It's going to take you back to the home page, and then we'll make a new project here. And for this project, I'll name it, let's just name it buttons. And then we'll create with that. So I said before, you're always going to get these when you start off with a program. You can take these and you get them a couple different ways. You can grab them and just drag them over here to that trash can. You can right click on it and hit delete block, or you can click on it and then hit the delete key on your keyboard. Usually I just grab them and drag them over here. Since we're doing buttons and inputs, obviously I'm probably going to want to look at the input on my block category. So if I click on input, you can see I have different options with this. I want to go ahead and grab the on button A is pressed. I'll grab that and move that out into my workspace. And then I'm going to want to make it do something when button A is pressed. So I'm going to come over here back to my basics. I click on basics. I got a show icon. And grab my show icon, and I'll slide it in here. And remember, it's grayed out because I can't do anything with it until I pull it into this. When I pull it into the on button A, the little yellow line turns yellow up the top, and it fits in and turns blue. So there's a couple ways we can make images with this. You can come here and grab just this block, and you can it's the 5x5 matrix, and you can color these in and make whatever image you want, which we'll do in our next project. But the nice thing about this also has a bunch of pre-made images that we can use. So if we grab the show icon again from the basics show icon, pull it out, we can do this, and it's got the little down arrow. You click on that, and we have a bunch of pre-made objects that you can use here. If you just kind of hover over it, it'll tell you what it is. There's a sad face, there's a heart, there's a small heart, fabulous me t-shirt. I think this is a roller skate. So you got different options with that. So what I want to do on this one, I'm going to go ahead and grab this and say, let's go ahead with a happy face. So now you can see when my microbit comes on over here, nothing's coming on my screen. That's because, again, like when we did this before, it automatically started scrolling across the hello world. This, we need to do something to have something show up. So if I push on the A button here, now I get my happy face. So that's our first interaction. Now I want to do some more buttons. So if I come over here, grab another input and grab on button A and pull it over here, you'll notice now when I pull this out, it's grayed out. And that's because um, I can only have one on button A. So when button A is pushed, I need to do this. In this case, I need to change this to a different input. So I'm going to change it from button A to button B. So now I can use it. So I'll come back over here again to the basics. I'll grab my show icon, slide it into here. So now I've got that in there. And then I want to change this to the sad face. So now if I look at this, if I push my A button, I get a happy face. I push the B button, sad face, happy, sad, right? Then I'm going to do one more. Grab this one, grab my A button again. And again, it's grayed out. I have another option. I can push A and B together. And now what you'll notice on our simulator over here, I get a new little button with this. So now I can not only push A and B, I got an A and B button together. So for my basics, I'm going to pull one more out of this, my show icon, bring it out here. Now in this case, I'm going to do this one. This is the image, right? So now I've got an A, happy, B, sad. I push A and B together, I get, everything's okay. Who cares, right? So one thing you can do with this microbit, if you have a classroom set, and the one of the things we always have problems with is those formative assessments that we have with our observations, things like that, right? So if you have enough of these for your kids, I have one set. We have these set up, and we have 3D printed battery holders. So like we said at the beginning, you can attach batteries to these, so they don't have to be attached to the computer all the time. So if you want to do some kind of formative assessment, you could have these just sitting on your desk as you're going through your lesson, and your students could be pushing these buttons and saying if they get something or not. So if I push the A button, you can say I'm a happy face, so I'm happy, everything's good with me. If I push the B button, you get a sad face. I need some help, right? Um, I could push A and B and just go, I'm just doing all right. Nothing, not a big deal with this, but I am doing okay with it. Or so you could just have that out all the time. And then so as you're doing your lesson, you can constantly be doing a form assessment. Or you could say, hey, let's do a real quick check with everybody. Go ahead and give me a happy face or a sad face, whether you get what we're doing here, right? One other thing we may want to add to this, um, one more little input, because the kids may say, all right, I'm done with all that. Let's do something a little bit different. If I scroll all the way down, because you notice with this one, we can only do an A, a B, or an A and a B. But I can also scroll down here. If you have version 2, you have some other options of the microbit. You have some other options. On the logo press, you can do this. So what I want to do is I want to be able to clear my screen out. So once the kids have said, hey, I'm happy, I'm sad, or I want to be able to clear this out. So I'll come back over here to my basics, and then I come down here to where it says clear screen. I'll pull that and put that in here. So now you can see, A, I'm happy, B, I'm sad, A and B, I'm just kind of getting along, and I can push the the logo and it'll clear everything out. So that I give you different options with that. And now you may want to change this around too, because you may want to say, hey, if you get what I'm saying, it's a check mark. If you don't get it, it's an X. So there's other options you can do with it, but it could be the same basic idea, right? And you may want to have something, especially if you have a larger class, where it's you can really tell from a distance um, if they're getting it or not. So that's basically a nice little way that you can um, use your microbit as a formative assessment. So when you're being observed, it's always nice to be able to do something like that with technology. So again, we could kind of walk through, you can kind of see where it goes with all these. And then here's kind of the last little bit. Here's all the different, here's not all of them. There's lots of different options that you have with this. You got button A, button B, A and B. It's because it has accelerometer. You can shake it and get something as well. You can make it do something with the sound. Logos pressed. You can use different pins for things. And then you can do the radio received or sorry, if you get receive a number or if you receive a string, you can do that. And there's other options with this too. So even with the shake, there's options within the shake, a 3G and a 5G, different things like that. How hard it's being shook. And then the logo, there's long press and short presses and things like that as well. So that's one way you can use it to actually interact with your microbit. So our next little project we're looking at is dealing with animation. And if you remember from when you were in elementary school, middle school, making the little blocks where or little books where you would draw a picture and then flip the picture and the little guy would run or do whatever, right? And when you talk about animations, that's really all it's doing. Even movies are like that. So I think, feature films are 24 frames per second. So you're basically just taking 24 pictures every single second. Your iPhones, I want to say and regular TV, I think does 30 frames per second. So it's just taking 30 pictures every second and then playing the back. So it looks like it's in motion. Um, the slow-mo on your camera is doing around 60 frames a second. And if you have one of the really good cameras, those really high-speed cameras, they do about 1,000 frames per second. Kind of an interesting little part that goes with this is they kind of use an idea like this to figure out a question with horses. For longest time, I think it was when they were trotting, nobody could figure out if at any point during the trot, if a horse had all 4 feet up off of the ground because horses ran so fast you could never really tell. So there was actually a guy. What he ended up doing is he took I think 24 cameras and put tripwires on them, and then had a horse run down. And as it tripped the wires, it took a picture of it, and so he basically made a nice little uh, animation of the horse running down the track. And it turned out that yeah, at one point in the trot, it does actually have all 4 feet off of the ground. So that's your animation in that sense. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make an animation real quick. In this case, again, go ahead and we've saved this. This is button, so we're good on this one. So let's go back to our home screen and click on new project. And we're going to call this one animation. Click on create. So now what we want to do is just make a little picture and have it animated. So I don't want to do anything with my on start here. I'm going to use the forever block. And the activity we have with this in our in our class is a ship sinking. So what we'll do is we'll come over here to our basic block category, grab the show LEDs, put it in the forever block, and then we want to basically draw a picture of a ship. So the way I would want to do that, I'm going to draw my hull. So I got the bottom part down here, and then the top part right here. So that basically is the bottom of my ship. And then here, I'm going to draw myself a couple of masts. And you can see now I've got a nice little ship with masts and the hull. So I want to animate it. So again, just like with the flip books, I draw a picture and then I draw the next picture of what would happen at that point. So a couple things we could do with this. I could come back over here to my basics, grab another one of these and pull it out and then do it. But an easier way to do this is if I right click on a block, I have some other options that come up. I can duplicate it. I can add a comment or delete the block. In this case, I want to hit the duplicate. So now I've duplicated it and I just want to redraw this as if the ship had sank a little bit into the water. So I'm going to go down basically one row. So I can get rid of uh, one row. So you can just picture this part right here has gone down one section, right? So I've nothing up here. And this bottom part is gone underwater. Now I can take this, drag it down, and let it click underneath my one above it. Now again, you look over here at our simulator and you can see it's sinking, but it's in this forever loop, right? So it sinks and then goes back to the top, sinks, comes back to the top. So it's just going on and on and on. So you can see you can do lots of fun stuff with this, just with the animation real quick of motion. But let's go ahead and make it sink a little bit more. So I'll just highlight this one again, right click on it, select duplicate, put it here. Now it's going to get down to just the masts are sticking up out of the water, right? So now I just got the three blocks here. Take this, drag it below that one. So now you can see my ship is sunk down to here. Need to grab one more, duplicate it down to just two blocks sticking up out of the water. Slide it down into here and then duplicate this one. And I end up with just the one block sticking out. And finally, I'll put my last block in here and that will be a nice blank screen, right? So now we got the scenario. You can see my ship sinks and goes all the way down. So technically we're really done here, right? So basically we have a ship that is sinking and then it just comes right back up. So it's just going to do this forever. One issue I kind of have with this is, it's just going too fast in terms of it sinks and then boom, pops right back up and it sinks again, pops right back up and sinks again. So what we could do is down here on the very last show LED, I could pause my program, let it rest for a second, kind of give us a break, and then start it over again. And to do that, I would come up here to the basics and scroll down a couple and see I got the little pause button here. I can pull this out, pause block, and then I got different options with this, and these are in milliseconds. So 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second, 500 milliseconds would be half a second. So I can take this, I'll put it in here, and then I'll change it to 500 milliseconds. So now you can see it's a little bit better because my ship sinks down and I get a little break, kind of clear screen, and then let it go from there. So not too bad. Other issue I kind of have with this is as I look at it, I think it's going sinking kind of fast, right? Or maybe sinking slow. I don't know. I'd like to be able to control the rate at which it is sinking. So we can actually do that with this little pause, like we use this pause here to stop the whole thing and then start over again. I can actually bring pauses in and put them in between each block. So let's do that and kind of see what ends up happening. So I come here to the basic block category, scroll down, go to my pause, pull it out, and put it right underneath the first LED. So now it's going to show this LED, wait 100 milliseconds. Then it's going to show these LEDs and then going down. So I want to put a pause after each one. So easy way to do this on this one, because they're all stacked up straight like this, I'm going to right click on it, duplicate it, slip it up underneath each one. So right click, duplicate, put it underneath each block, right click, duplicate, put it underneath the block. right click, duplicate, and put it underneath the block. And that should be all of them. So now you can see it slowed it down a little bit, right? So my ship goes down. It's not a whole lot slower, but it does go down a little bit slower, which is nice. I'd still like to play with a little bit more. I could go through and say, hey, let's make each one 500. So let's wait half a second after each block. And go through and change each one. And now it's going nice and slow, right? So that's kind of cool. But I want to play with it a little bit more because I think, well, maybe 400 would look even better, right? But you can see I've got five, count the bottom one here, you got 6 blocks that you have to go through and change. Ends up getting kind of tedious. So we have to look at this and say, is there an easier way to do this? And yeah, there is with something called a variable. So we can actually include a variable in this. And then if I can just change the one number of a variable and it'll actually change all of these down here. So let's go ahead and include a variable for my pause and see how much easier that makes it on kind of playing with my syncing rate. So now if you look right here, you'll notice, we got the basics, and then if we go down to variables, if I click on variables, I don't have anything here except the make a variable block. So if I click on make a variable, it gives me the option to name a variable. I'm going to name this variable weight. Could name it pause, but the reason I don't want to name pause on this one is because we use pause on the block. Actual block is called pause. So I'm going to name this weight and hit OK. And then you'll notice after I created this variable, now I have my variable here, but I also get 2 extra blocks. So I can set the variable weight to a number, or I can change the weight by a certain number. So the one I want to use here, I want to get the set weight to something. So I'm going to pull this out. And I'm going to slide it right in here underneath the forever block. I'm going to say set weight equal to 0. And then if I change this number, let's just say I change it to 100. So now my weight variable is actually set to 100. So it didn't change anything on here, right? And that's because we don't have any of the variables actually put into our program. We just have it set. So now if I come over here back to my variables block, grab the weight variable out, and I'll put it in, instead of writing all these numbers here, I'm going to put that as a weight variable. One thing you may notice here, again, is grayed out. As I pull it closer to this, you'll see those 2 little red dots come together, and then they suck together and it puts in there. So now whatever my variable is set to here is what number is going to go down here, right? So I set my weight variable to 100. It's going to be here. So let's go ahead and duplicate this and put the weight variable into our pause block for each one. And now you can see whatever number I put right here is going to be how long my pause is. So now you can see it's going pretty fast. And what's cool about this is now I can just adjust this. I can just say, hey, let's change this to 500. And you can see automatically it changes all of those. So the whole thing goes down nice and slow, right? So now I can kind of play with this and say what really makes it look a little more realistic. So I can change it to 1,000. 1,000 makes it go really slow. So I'd probably say that's a little bit too slow. But I also may look at this and say, well, you know, I've never actually seen a ship sink, but I don't know that they sink down at a constant rate. So I can actually throw in another variable and change the rate at which it sinks. So if I come back over here to my variables and I'll make another variable, I'll call this one weight 2 and click OK. Now I'll pull out the weight 2 and put it right underneath my weight 1. And now you can see, and I got 2 variables. One is set at 1,000, one is set at 0. So this is weight 1, this is weight 2, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change these to the weight 2s. Oops, change it to weight 2. So now you can see as my ship sinks down, it sinks faster as it goes down. So the cool thing about these variables is you can kind of play with them and make it speed up or slow down however fast you want it to. So that is our animation. It gives you a nice little introduction. You got the forever loop, so it's going to loop forever. And then we've got some variables in here as well to control our rate of sinking. So that is your animations. So we kind of look through this. This is the basic idea. Then we hit all those, and then we did our variables. All right, so the next thing we got is a numbers cube. So let's go ahead and we got this saved as animation. It should stay there. Go ahead and click on the home button, take us back to this, and we'll make a new project. I'm going to name my project Numbers Cube and hit create. So Numbers Cube obviously is just a dice game, right? So we can um, I named a numbers cube because the last school I was at, if you had dice um, in your backpack, you guys automatically suspended. So I didn't want to get any kids in trouble. So we want to have some kind of input with this as well. So I don't really want either one of these. So I'm going to take both of these and drag these out, get them out of the way, and start with a fresh, clean space here. And so I'm going to need an input. So let's go to the input block category. Now, most people, when they do the dice, they'll grab the on shake because when you grab when you do dice, you shake them before you throw them, and that's fine. I just like to have the A button so it's easy for me to push and jump onto. So on button A, I want to display a number, right? So in this case, I'm going to say, all right, if I push the button A, I'm going to come over to basic. I'm going to show a number. And so in this case, if you push button A right now, it's going to show the number 0. You can verify that by clicking on the A and it'll show a 0. So whatever number you have right here is the number that's going to show up on the microbit when you push the A button. That doesn't do us a whole lot of good because if we're trying to make a set of dice or die, what we really want to be able to do here is generate a random number between 1 and 6. So the nice thing about the MakeCode is it gives us that opportunity. If we just come down here to the math part and scroll down, they actually have a thing called pick random number 0 to 10. So you can grab that and pull it out. So again, come over here to the math block category, click on that, scroll down to pick random number 0 to 10. And again, it's grayed out here, right? So I can take this and just like with the variables, if I put it close to my oval, I get the 2 little red dots and I know it will jump in. So now when I push the A button, it's going to show a random number between 0 and 10. And that's just the default that comes with it. We can change these numbers. So now if I come over here, hit the A button, it's just going to randomly pick a number between 1 and 10. So obviously we want to fix this a little bit. I'm going to say that change it from a 1 to a 6. So now if you look at this, I push my A button, I get a 5, 4, 6, a 2, 4. So again, it's just going to randomly select a number. Now, one thing you may have noticed as I was pushing buttons here, the issue that I run into with this a lot of times is if I push the button, sometimes I can't tell if it really rolled the dice again and I got the same number, or if I just accidentally hit the side and didn't really get the number. So what I want to add to this is some kind of indication that, yeah, the dice were definitely rolled. This is a new number. So what I think I'll do is come back to my basics, and I'm going to clear the screen. So whatever number was on there before, it's going to clear that out and then put a new number in. So again, you can see I bring it in here. It's grayed out. I'm going to take this. I'm going to slide it right in here underneath the button A. Now, when I push button A, it's going to clear the screen. It's going to show a random number between 1 and 6. However, if I click the button, you notice nothing's really different there, right? And that's because after it clears the screen, it immediately shows the next number. So we need to go back to our little pause that we first saw with the animation and put that under here so we get a little break before we actually show the number. So come back up here to basics, grab my pause. I'm going to put this underneath the clear screen. So now when I push the A button, I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to pause. I'm going to wait about half a second, 500 milliseconds. Then I'm going to pick a random number. So now when I hit this, got a 5, hit it again. See how it blanks out for a second before it shows the next number. So in this case, I know for a fact that there's a, see, I just rolled a 1 and then another one. I know for a fact that it actually is a 1 and then another one. And I didn't just accidentally not click on this real good. So really that's all there is to rolling a set of dice. So you can use this on any activity that you have where you need to use dice. But we really want to add a little more functionality to this. And what we want to do is turn this into a random number selector for you and your kids to use. Again, this back to this whole idea of when you're getting observed. My administration always loved those random selectors. So if we're doing a bell ringer activity, uh, you do a random number. All my desks were numbered, and then they were actually had to stay on their toes to make sure that they knew the answer to or had a good explanation for the bell ringer because they didn't know if they were going to be called on or not. Same thing when we did homework or work problems. Just kind of keeps them on their toes, keeps them engaged because they never know when they're going to be the next one called on. So we want to set this up to be a random number generator. And an easy way to do this obviously would be, hey, if I have 24 kids in my class, I can just change this number to 24. And now when I come over here, I can hit the A button. 4 got it. In this case, now it's 21. Now I randomly generate a 7, 6, 1, 9. You see, the problem with this though is it if it's a 2-digit number, it doesn't have any persistence, right? It goes away. So now if I happen to miss that number, was it a 12? Was it an 11? Was it a 17? I don't have any way to recall it. So we want to come up with some kind of way to be able to recall the last number that was selected. So let's go ahead and we can keep this. This is good for leave this at 6. This is good for our random our dice. So, but let's go ahead and make a new one for a random number selector. So click on your home button or the microbit button and select a new project. And then we're going to let's just name this one random selector. So we're going to randomly select a number. So I don't really want my on start. I just want to use my forever block. And now I want to set this up to where I'm going to use a variable, but I also need to push a button, right? So let's go ahead, and this for one of our new things is logic. So we're going to use some logic in this. We're going to say, if one thing happens, I want to do this. If something else happens, I want to do something different. So if you click on the logic, you can see if true, then. So let's go ahead and grab that and slide this into here. So if something is true, I want to do one thing. Something else is true, I want to do something different. In this case, I'm going to come back to my input. I'm going to say if button A is pushed, and again, you look, we got this little hexagon. Button A is pushed here, slide it into that. I'm going to do a certain thing. Again, what we want to be able to do is have a variable so we can always recall that variable. So let's go ahead and come down to variables. I want to make a new variable, and you can name it whatever you want to. Let's name this one number. And now again, you can see, hey, I've got these new things here, and I can bring this one, say set number to something, right? So now if I push button A, I'm going to set my variable number to, in this case, it's going to be 0. But if you remember, we can generate a random number from one of our math blocks. So I click on my math, scroll down, select pick random number, pull it out. And again, it will slide right into that, right? So I see those two little red dots. Now I can say if button A is pushed, I'm going to set my variable number to a random number, but in this case, between 0 and 10. So I could say 1 and 6. And then I just want to display that number, right? So I come back to my basics, say I'm going to show my number. Again, like we said, so I push button A, set my number to just some random number. I want to show a number. But again, remember in this case, it's going to show whatever's right here. And I don't want to show 0. I want to show my variable. So let's go back to our variables down here and select my variable number and slide it into that. So now you can look and see button A is pressed. I'm going to set my number to a random number between 1 and 6, and then I'm going to show that. So let's check it and see. Yep. So I got a 2, 4, 2. Again, see, I'm clicking that, and I can't really tell necessarily if it's doing anything. So we can do basically what we did on our dice. Come back up here to my basics. I'm going to clear my screen. Button A is push. I'm going to clear the screen. Then I'm going to wait for half a second, and then I'm going to display it, right? So now I can be a little more confident that I'm actually getting a new number generated every single time. So I know that's a new 5, that's a 4. So basically what we have here is a way to do the dice just a little bit different, but now you can see it's a lot easier. I can come over here, I can hit I have 24 students in my class, hit the A button, and now it's going to display. Still got the same problem though of what was that? That was a 20. I can't recall it. If something happened, I couldn't remember it. I wouldn't be able to bring it back up. But it's still in there because remember, it's just this number right here. It just showed what this was. So it's our variable number. So we can always pull it back up. So what I want to do here is I can hit the plus down here, or I can even just slide one into here on my logic. If A was pushed, I can also come and say, from my logic, I can grab another if block, pull it in here. If something else is true, I can, just like button A is pushed here, I can come here, I can say if button A is pushed, and now I can change this from button A to button B. So if button A is pushed, I'm going to do this, but if button B is pushed, I'm going to do something a little bit different. In this case, what I want to do is I want to show a number, and that number is my variable number. So now you can see if my button A is pushed, I'm going to randomly generate a number between 1 and 24. In this case, it's 21. If you missed it and you say, hey, what was that number? I can always come back and push button B again. And it's just going to recall that. And it's going to throw it right back out there. So I can always pull it back up. So if you got a kid say, hey, you didn't call my number, you called Susie's, you can say, no, let's see. Oh, it's 21. Yeah, you're 21. So you got it. So there's a good way to do a nice little uh, random number selector. Um, One other little thing we can do, well, hold on, let's do a coin. Let's do a couple other ones, and then we'll come back to something else with the dice if we have time for it. So that's your random number selector. So we're done with that one. We can close out of this one, and let's go to a new project. And this one we're going to do is it's called the coin flip. So let's go ahead and name this coin flip and create it. And then again, I'm not going, so this is going to emulate flipping a coin. So you can do that instead of actually flipping a real coin. Um, so again, I'm going to need some kind of input to get this started. I'm going to use the on button A. So go ahead and grab an input. Again, you could use shake or some other one if you'd like to. Again, I just like the button A to push. Um, so now I'll come back to my logic. I'm going to say if something happens, I want to do something. So in this case, if something's true, then do this. If not, we'll do something different. Um, Now, if you remember, we could generate a random number between, 1 and whatever, or 0 and whatever if we wanted to. We can also just do a little binary function here. If something's going to be true or false, we have a math function for that as well. So come down here to the math, and see we got a random number here. We don't want that one. What we want to do is pick a random true or false. And you can see again, we got a little hexagon here. So this should fit right into there. So now I got the scenario. If I push button A, I'm going to pick a random true or false. And if I do that, I want to simulate a heads, right? So now we can come back to our basics. I can look at my show icon. And for a head, you can pick, whatever you like. I'm going to say a smiley face because George Washington's face is on a quarter, right? So I'm going to say a smiley face is my heads. And then if I don't get a true, what am I going to show? And then we'll just say, we'll come back to my basics, show different icon. In this case, I want to show tails. And if I think of back of a quarter's got an eagle on it. So in this case, I'm going to pick a duck. So now you can see if I push button A, it's going to randomly generate true or false. If it's true, I do smiley face. If it's false, I do a duck. So we can test it out on our emulator over here. Click A, I got a tails. Click it again, I got tails. Click it again, I got heads, tails. Again, we still have that same issue we had before of, am I really getting 2 or 3 heads in a row or 2 or 3 tails in a row? Or am I just not clicking the button good? And we could do like we did before. Don't do this one, but you could easily come here and grab the screen, do a clear screen, and pause for half a second. Um, so we could do like we did before, and now I do know because I get a blank screen for half a second, and then I get my next character come up. But I want to do something a little bit different with this one because this is more like a coin flip, right? So as my coin's flipping, it's going through the air. It should be flipping, going round and round. So let's delete these two and pretend like we have a coin flipping as it goes through the air. So what we want to do with this one is have another loop, and it's a little bit different kind of loop for this one. I'm going to click on the loop here. I'm going to have a loop that I'm going to repeat a certain number of times. So I can pull this one out. It says this is repeat 4 times. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to move on. So I'm going to slide this repeat block right underneath A, and then I'm going to have it do something. So if I'm going to pretend like coins flipping, there's a couple of different ways you could do this. I'm going to grab my show LEDs. I may want to just light all these up like this. So they all come on at once. I'll duplicate that, put it under here, and then I'll make it a little bit different. So now you can see I got all my lights are on, then some are on, some are off. So now you can see if I do this, if I do my flip, I go on, off, on, off. So it kind of looks like it's flipping through the air, and then I get a heads. And then flipping through the air, I get a tails, right? Yeah, I can adjust this. 4, that's probably too many. I may drop this down to 2. I drop this down to 2. Do a couple times tails, a couple times heads. So you can play with like that. Other people, that's one way to do it. You may prefer to stick your 2 icons in there that you use for your heads and tails. So if you want to do something like that, you can hit the duplicate. I can put that here. I can duplicate my duck, put it under here. You get the same basic effect. So I hit the A button, I get heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, up, heads, right? And then I can go again, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, and I end up with heads. So there's a way that you can emulate your coin flips. Okay. Um, so that takes care of all of our coin flipping. Um, One other thing we may want to do with this is uh, some kind of step counter. So let's go ahead and close out of this one again. So let's go to our home button, come back to the home page, and I'm going to start a new project again. In this case, I'm going to do like a pedometer. So I want to be able to count my steps. So let's call this step counter. Want to create that. Um, So we'll do this one just a little bit different. Instead of using all those logic blocks, we'll do it with a little bit differently. Um, so again, I still need an input, and if I'm doing a step counter, obviously this is gonna have to be a shake, right? So you have to use that accelerometer. So every time you take a step, it's gonna be able to determine whether or not you have moved up or down. So let's come back to our little input here. And I'm going to go to on shake. So I'm going to pull my on shake out. And then I'm going to need a variable, right? Um, so let's come down here to our variables because my variable is going to be, I want to add to my steps every single time. So what I want to do is make a variable. I'm going to name this variable steps or just step. And now you can see we got our variable step. And then we still have, like we did before, it said set step equal to 0. And change step by 1. We've been using this one up to this point. In this case, what I want to do is use the change step by 1. And what that's going to do is going to take my variable step and add 1 to it. So now you can see if I shake, it's going to take step, add 1 to it. And every time it shakes, it's going to add 1 more to it and 1 more to it. So I hit the A or shake button here. You don't see anything displayed, right? Even though I'm getting my variable, something's being added to my variable, but you can't see it because we didn't tell it to display any numbers here. So again, if we come back up to the basics, I want to show my number, put it here. Again, if I hit the shake button, it's just going to show the 0 because that's what's here. What we want in this block is our actual shake variable. So we come back down to our variables, block categories, grabs the step out, put it into here. Now you can see when I shake it, it's going to take my step, add 1 to it, and show that on here. So, oops, hit shake, shows a 1, shake it again, I get a 2, shake it again, I get a 3, shake again, I get a 4, a 5, so on, right? Now, I get to I get to double digits and we're back to the same problem we had before. You know, what number am I on right now? I don't know. So, we're sitting here with my friend saying, hey, how many steps do you have? I don't know. I can't see right from this. The only way I could really tell is if I hit my shake one more time. Okay, it's at 12, but that's going to add one to it. So I don't want to do that. So we're back to this idea. How can I recall that variable somehow? So before we were doing it with if-then statements. In this case, what we want to do is I got uh, on shake, I'm going to do this. I can come back here. I can do on the A button, I can do something different, right? So in this case, if I press the button A, I can just show a number. In this case, the number I want to show is my variable steps. So I'll slide this into here. So now what we're looking at, when I shake it, I take my variable, add one to it, display it, take it, display it, add one to it. If I just push A, then it's going to actually show how many steps I've taken, what the variable is. So now if I come over here and look at this, shake it, I get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, now we're back to that point where I'm sitting at 12 and I don't really know. I want to be able to come, whoops, I shook it. So now we're up to 13. I want to be able to see how many steps I really have. So I can hit my A button and that's going to redisplay how many steps we've taken. So right now I'm sitting at 13 steps, right? So that's going to help out with that one. Other issue, I guess, that we would be looking at with this is, so it's Tuesday night at 7:18 Central Time here, and I need to reset this for tomorrow because I don't want to do this for the whole week. I want to reset them every day. So I need to find a way to set this back to 0 because right now, no matter what I do, it's going to keep adding to my variable, right? So what I could do, let that clear out. I could come back to my input, pull out my on button A, change that to, if I push button B, I'm going to do something different. And then what I want to do is reset my variable. So I want to come back to my variable like category and grab my set my step equal to something. In this case, I want to set my step equal to 0. So now you can see if I shake it, I'm going to take step, add one to it, and display that. Add one to it, and display it. If I push button A, it's still going to show me my variable number of steps. If I click button B, it's going to clear it out to change my variable back to 0. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. We can do all this. That's working. And then I can hit B. That's going to set me back to 0. Come back, hit the shake. You can see it's at 1. Other issue I kind of have with this, if I hit button B here, I set that to 0, right? But I still have a 3 here, so that's not doing me any good. Did it set it to 0? Well, we can check if I hit the A. Yeah. So it did set it to 0, but it didn't display it. So if I hit this, I'm sitting at 4, reset it back to 0. Doesn't tell me that. It still tells me I'm at 4. I know I'm at 0 because I can go back and display my variable and it's 0. So the last thing we probably want to do with this is come back to here and set this, clear out our screen. So let's come back here to our basic and hit clear, pull the clear screen block out, put it here. Now we've got our step counter in good shape. So now I take a step, take a step, take a step. I'm at 4. I set it to 0. And again, you can see it goes back to, it clears off and goes back to 0. The one thing that's probably not real good about this is we're using button B here. And in real life, if I was doing this, just knowing me, I would actually hit button B all the time and be clearing it out. So I wouldn't use on button B here. You're probably better off doing button A and B. So in this case, doesn't really matter on this one, but you can see on the real microbit, I'd actually have to consciously push A and B together to clear it out. And I know that would be the clear step. All right, everybody good? All right, so I think I had one more uh, little project that we could do, but we're sitting at we only have about 9 minutes left. So I wanted to go ahead and finish this off and give you guys a chance to see a few other things that we have. So we went through all these: coin flip, step counter. So our next step, I just want to thank you all for joining us here today. And everything that you have, we can find on our website, cyber.org. If you go to this just takes us to our webpage. If you need to get in touch with me, here's my email address. And